Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 16th Annual Moran Address. This event takes place each spring to honor Dr. William C. Moran, who served as the Vice President for Academic Affairs of Francis Marion College from 1978 through 1992, when he became the President of Lander University, a position he held for 8 years. Dr. Moran's dedication to public service and higher education was recognized in the year 2000 when he was awarded the state's highest civilian honor, the Order of the Palmetto. Additionally, he was awarded the Governor's Award in the Humanities in 2008. This year's address will be presented by Dr. Ben Kyer, Professor Emeritus of Economics. His talk this afternoon is titled, "A Lucky Man." Ben earned his BS at Glenville State College and his MS and PhD from West Virginia University. He began his career at FMU in 1989 as a specialist in macroeconomics. During his 35 years of service to the university, Ben was appointed as a Board of Trustees Research Scholar in 2016 and named Distinguished Professor in 1993. For many of the former students in the auditorium today, they know Dr. Kyer best because of his work as the MBA Director, a position he held for 13 years. As President Carter states in his message in the program you'll be able to get on the way out, Dr. Kyer is, quote, "a person of impeccable honor and integrity and one of the university's most accomplished and talented faculty," unquote. And because of that, we are the lucky ones to have worked with him over all of these years. And now please join me in welcoming Dr. Ben Kyer.
Thank you, Dr. Waters. And thank you all for being here today. A special thank you to the Faculty Life Committee for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And another special thank you to Dr. Sean Miller for helping me to prepare for today's event. Good afternoon. It is my great honor and pleasure to present the 16th William C. Moran Address. I think it's appropriate that I tell you a brief story about Bill Moran. In May 1989, my wife Tina and I drove here from Rome, Georgia, for my campus interviews. One of those chats, of course, was with Dean Moran. I remember 3 things vividly about our first meeting. First, he had a very deep, Darth Vader-esque, intimidating voice. Second, he was a West Virginia guy like me, a good omen, I thought. And third, he threatened to fire me before he even hired me. Let me explain. After he finished telling me about Francis Marion College, he kindly asked if I had any questions of him. I replied that I did. Because tenure was such a contentious and divisive subject at the college where I then worked, I asked him about tenure here. He leaned forward in his large dean's chair, looked me straight in the eye, and said confidently, and with that deep voice, "Dr. Kyer, I have 100% tenure." I was surprised, given what I had experienced the past 6 years at my previous school, where few faculty had attained tenure after lengthy service. He must have read my facial expression of amazement, if not total disbelief, and then continued. "We will watch you very closely for the first year or two, and if you're not working out, we will terminate you. The tenure decision here is made informally before the end of your probationary employment. We do not believe in using people for 6 or 7 years and then turning them away." I thought, man, what a humane and professional way to manage and treat people. I liked Bill Moran very much. I enjoyed working for him, and I was both disappointed and saddened when he left Francis Marion to become president of Lander University. Now, on to the matter at hand. During his farewell speech, In Yankee Stadium on July 4th, 1939, Lou Gehrig declared himself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. And he attributed his good luck to the people in his life: the fans, his fellow ball players, the owners, the managers, the groundskeepers, and his family, even his mother-in-law. As the title of this valedictory states, I also consider myself a very lucky man. And, like the Iron Horse, my good luck is largely the result of the people I have known and loved during my life. So, for the next few minutes, I would like to share with you who some of those people have been and are. In chapters on socialism, the 19th century English philosopher and political economist John Stuart Mill wrote, "It is true that the lot of individuals is not wholly independent of their virtue and intelligence. These do really tell in their favor, but far less than many other things in which there is no merit at all. The most powerful of all the determining circumstances is birth." I will not argue with Mr. Mill, a man with an estimated IQ of 190, and so I will begin with my dad and mom. I was truly lucky to have them as my parents. My good fortune actually began even before I was born with my dad's good luck. Specifically, Dad, a yeoman first class in the United States Navy, was lucky to survive World War II. On the morning of 19 March 1945, his ship, the aircraft carrier USS Wasp, also known as CV-18 and the Mighty Stinger, was stationed off the coast of Kyushu, the southernmost and third largest of the four main islands of Japan, and its planes were conducting airstrikes on the kamikaze bases located there. At 0709 hours, the Wasp was hit by a 550-pound bomb, dropped from a Japanese dive bomber, an airplane the Americans called a Judy. That bomb, an armor-piercing, delayed explosion type, penetrated the flight deck and the 4-inch thick steel hangar deck and exploded in the center of the crew's galley on the third deck. The blast killed 102 of Dad's mates and injured 285 others in both the galley and the large mess hall located just aft of the galley. In one of the few times that I can remember Dad talking about the war, he said that he had just left the mess hall that morning after having breakfast. I am fortunate and glad that luck was with my dad that morning 80 years ago. I will tell you now that John Tuttle's dad also served on the Wasp during the Second World War, perhaps at the same time as my dad. Now, how's that for a coincidence? Our fathers aboard the same ship in World War II, and then John and I on the same ship of academia many decades later. Dad came home after the war, took the GI Bill, earned a bachelor's degree, got married, and went to work as an accountant for a man in the gasoline distribution business. After a few years, he ventured out on his own and started an insurance and real estate office. My dad would have been delighted if I had gone to work with him after I finished undergraduate school. But again, I was very lucky because he supported my decision to attend graduate school instead. In fact, I think one of the happiest days of my dad's life was the day he went with me to my doctoral dissertation defense in September of 1984. At that time, the economics department of West Virginia University had a tradition to repair to the Chestnut Pub following a successful defense for a celebration of the new PhD with some drinks. Although Dad was a teetotaler, he was also a good sport and actually had a few sips of beer with my dissertation chairman and the other celebrants. I drank a bit more than a few sips of beer, no surprise there, and so Dad had to drive home. But he was happy that day, and I hope he was also proud of me. With leader of the band, Dan Fogelberg tells the story of and shares some feelings for his father. 4 lines of that song are words which I could have and should have said to my dad, but I didn't because I was too young and too stupid. Those words are, I thank you for your stories of the road. I thank you for the freedom when it came my time to go. I thank you for your kindness and the times when you got tough. And Papa, I don't think I said, I love you near enough. Dad died before I came to Francis Marion, but I am certain that he, a Navy veteran and an American patriot, would be very pleased that I spent 35 years, the majority of my life, at a university with the Patriot as its mascot. My mom was a much different story. She was not well educated, and she didn't have a career. Mom dropped out of high school, but not because she couldn't or didn't succeed academically. She left school to help her family. As the eldest girl of 7 children, she was needed at home to help take care of her younger siblings. Her life's path was determined. She would spend most of the rest of her life outside the labor market, working as a housewife and taking care of other people. As my mom, her life was primarily devoted to attending to our extended household, which consisted of Dad, Mom, and me, of course, but also 3 of my grandparents. As busy as she always was, though, I never heard her complain. She always had time for me, and it was to her that I confided my thoughts, my feelings, and my troubles as I grew up. One of my fondest memories of my mom dates to late in 2004. By then, she was almost 76 years old, in failing health, and it had become apparent that she could no longer live by herself in West Virginia. So, Tina and I rented a U-Haul and packed into it the various things that Mom would need in order to move into an assisted living facility here. As we started out on moving day, Mom rode with Tina in our car, and I drove the truck. When we stopped in North Carolina for lunch, I asked Mom if she would like to ride the rest of the way to Florence in the truck with me. I expected her to say no because the truck would be too uncomfortable for her. But to my surprise and delight, she said yes. For the next 3 hours in that rented truck, Mom and I talked and laughed, and it seemed that she was young and healthy again, and I was just her little boy one last time. That was the final road trip for Mom. I hope I made her happy that day, and more importantly, I hope that she knew that I loved her. The American Heartland rocker John Mellencamp sings, I was born in a small town, and I cannot forget from where it is that I come from. Like Mr. Mellencamp, I too was born in a small town that I cannot forget, and because it was such a terrific place to grow up, I'd like to tell you a little about my small town, the town where I come from, Gassaway, West Virginia. Gassaway was established in 1905 as a railroad town, smack dab in the middle of West Virginia and in the heart of Appalachia. As bleak as that may sound to some, I consider myself especially lucky to having grown up there during the 50s and 60s until the mid-70s. Gassaway was then a bustling burg of about 1,200 God-fearing, law-abiding, hardworking people. As a kid, my favorite spots were the community swimming pool, where I spent many of my summer afternoons, and the town park, down by the railroad tracks and depot, where I played hundreds of hours of basketball, trying to perfect my jump shot, dreaming and hoping to be the next Jerry West or Mr. Clutch, my basketball hero and a fellow West Virginia boy. And we all know how that dream turned out. In my small town, nobody ever locked their doors day or night. In fact, when your groceries were delivered, the deliverer would open the unlocked door, take your food to the kitchen, and if there was milk and or eggs, put them in your refrigerator. Gasaway was an idyllic small town, a real-world Mayberry, and I was very fortunate to be born and reared there. I am also extremely lucky to have been born in the United States, with its economic and political systems that provide the freedoms and opportunities necessary to achieve the successes that can't be and aren't realized in many other nations of the world. You and I understand and appreciate just how important teachers are. I was very lucky to have had many excellent and dedicated teachers, from Mrs. Juanita Chrisman in the first grade, to Mrs. Betty Thomas, who taught typing in high school, to Dr. Chris Schustrom, a psychology professor in undergraduate school, to Dr. Kathy Palumba in graduate school. Perhaps the most important of all my teachers was my dissertation chairman, Dr. Kerno Kim. Dr. Kim was a PhD from the University of Chicago who had studied under the esteemed American economics professor Milton Friedman, the leader of the monetarist school of macroeconomics and Nobel laureate, whom Dr. Kim called a very demanding man. I, on the other hand, was probably one of the weakest economics PhD students at West Virginia University. I failed the comprehensive examination in monetary theory the first time I took it. It was Dr. Kim, the chairman of the macroeconomic theory comprehensive exam committee, who suggested I write a dissertation in macroeconomics. Fortunately, I took his suggestion and embarked on that journey. Along the way, Dr. Kim helped me refine my dissertation topic, assisted with the mathematical model, told me where to find and helped me obtain the unpublished data that I needed, and perhaps most significantly, critiqued closely the empirical results. With his expert and patient guidance, my dissertation was approved by my committee, and from that dissertation came my first publication in 1987 in the Atlantic Economic Journal. I was lucky that Dr. Kim rescued me. I couldn't have finished without him. Luck, or fortune as he called it, was an important phenomenon to Adam Smith, the 18th century Scottish moral philosopher and political economist. And he wrote about it in both of his two major works, The Theory of Moral Sentiments and An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations. Indeed, in Moral Sentiments, he asserted that fortune governs the world. To Dr. Smith, the world in general and the economic world in particular are unpredictable, and he therefore placed considerable emphasis on friends and friendships to help us navigate life's difficulties and celebrate life's achievements. I have been fortunate to enjoy close friends my entire life. In fact, it was friendship and not the usual formal application process that brought me to Francis Marion. A friend of mine and fellow professor mentioned my tenuous situation with my previous college administrator to a friend of his. That friend then told Morgan Coker, the dean of the School of Business here in 1989, about me. Dean Coker phoned me and invited me for campus interviews. I accepted his invitation even though I had never heard of either Florence, South Carolina, or Francis Marion College before Dean Coker's call. I got the job, stayed for 35 years, and developed many close friends here. Let me tell you now about one of them, a larger-than-life character who many of you know. Barry O'Brien and I have spent a lot of time together in the past almost 36 years. We have talked about many things, especially early in the morning in my office on campus, gone to sporting events, and traveled together. I could entertain you with stories about Barry for hours, and one of my favorite tales about that large Irishman recalls our trip to Scotland in March 2006 with Jeff Pompey and Brian Fisher. The four of us spent one night in an Edinburgh hotel where Barry and I shared a room. In the middle of the night, I woke up, teeth chattering, body shivering, thinking I was going to freeze to death. I sat up in bed, and as I groped for extra covers that I hoped would save my life, I noticed that the lone and large window in the room, which had been closed when we went to bed, was now fully open, and through it came both a frigid wind and wafting snow. Just then, and out of the darkness, I heard Barry say, quite loudly, "Are you cold, Kyer?" I will leave to your imagination my response to him. I shouldn't repeat those words here. For the same reason, I shouldn't share with you the moniker that Barry received from a Scottish bloke during that same trip at the Central Bar in Daly late one night, or early one morning, I can't quite remember. And if you're wondering, the Edinburgh Hotel window stayed open for the remainder of the night. One more Barry story. When we were converting our MBA degree to an online program, each faculty member was to choose his or her own pedagogical approach. For example, YouTube videos or voice-over PowerPoint slides. As Dean O'Brien and I discussed this weighty academic issue one morning, he told me that I was going the PowerPoint route. When I asked him, why PowerPoint slides for me? He replied with no hesitation, because you have a face made for radio. Now I ask you, aren't I lucky to have such a close friend as Barry who would be that honest with me? And if you're wondering, I did indeed adopt the voice-over PowerPoint method. Another dear friend, but not an FMU person, is Gary Maggs. I first met Gary, who hails from Youngstown, Ohio, in 1980, when we were students and teaching assistants in the economics PhD program at West Virginia University, and we have remained friends since then. Even though we didn't see each other often during our careers, he at St. John Fisher University in Rochester, New York, we developed a rather productive scholarly partnership. Beginning in 1992 with our paper in the Journal of Macroeconomics, Gary and I published 34 articles in more than a dozen refereed journals. Gary had this remarkable ability to take the smallest seed of an idea and nurture it into a viable research project, which eventually resulted in a published paper. Without Gary, I could not have accomplished much of what I have with respect to scholarly publications. I have been most fortunate to have Gary as both my close friend and research partner. Although I admire and respect Gary greatly for his academic expertise, what I applaud most are his guitar chops. He is a terrific player. Gary can hear a guitar lick just once and then play it perfectly. He demonstrated that rare gift to me, perfect pitch, to me for the first time with Van Halen's Finish What You Started. While I had struggled for some time to figure out those notes with my musically challenged ears and fingers, Gary nailed it instantly. I was and still am envious and jealous. Perhaps if we had lived closer, and with a little luck, some of his guitar magic just might have rubbed off on me. And anyone who recalls the original Tuesday Tunes sessions knows I could use the help. Ah, yes, Tuesday Tunes. That phrase evokes such pleasant memories for me. Those several hours each Tuesday evening in the cottage were great fun, and I always looked forward to that time of the week. For those of you uninitiated, the core group consisted of 8 of us, playing primarily acoustic guitars, with various other FMU people joining in occasionally. We sat in a circle in front of the fireplace, each of us in our traditional spot. Ken Autry, a professor of English and our exalted musical leader, would start the tunes each evening, often with a rousing rendition of that old folk song, "Hand Me Down My Walking Cane." We were quite the eclectic bunch. Each of us had different genres and specific artists that we favored and played. I don't want to brag, but our repertoire was extensive and included everything from gospel to blues and everybody from Merle Haggard to Bruce Springsteen. Importantly, we never took ourselves too seriously. Sure, we sometimes forgot the lyrics and strummed the wrong chords, but those mistakes just led to cheerful laughter and more drinks. Many of the happiest memories that I have from my time at Francis Marion, and I have many happy memories indeed, come from Tuesday Tunes. I was sad when Tuesday Tunes ended, but I was very lucky to have played some music with and enjoyed the company of such talented and wonderful people. When your child tells you that he or she intends to marry, you hope for, at minimum, 3 things: that the engaged truly love one another, that the marriage will be long and stable, and that the new family member accepts the new in-laws. My daughter-in-law, Laura, checks all 3 of those boxes. Laura was born and raised in Frostburg, Maryland, and she met my son Matthew in 2003. They married in 2006 and have 1 child, Macy, and 1 grandchild, Forrest. Laura has been a devoted wife and mother and has also been accepting and kind to Tina and me. She invites us into their home regularly and includes us for Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners. Laura is a graduate of Allegheny College in Maryland and is now a respiratory therapist licensed to practice in both North Carolina and South Carolina. I am thankful for her and happy that she has joined our little family. A father could not be prouder of a son than I am of Matt. He overcame some very serious health issues to succeed in life. After high school, Matt came to Francis Marion, majored in biology, minored in chemistry, and did well academically. Matt received a comprehensive and rigorous education at Francis Marion that prepared him well for both life in general and graduate studies in particular. And for that, I am most grateful to the FMU faculty. Matt earned a master's degree from Alderson Broaddus College in West Virginia and currently works as a licensed physician assistant in Rock Hill. Matt has always been a quiet individual, a man of few words. 2 stories will illustrate his brevity, and the first one involves the Statue of Liberty. Tina and I had taken him to New York City one summer where we did all the tourist stuff: Times Square, Ellis Island, a Yankees game, the Empire State Building, and so on. We also visited Liberty Island, where we asked Matt if he would like to climb up inside the statue and look out over the harbor. He said that he did. Now, if any of you all have ever done that, you know it is not an easy trek. There are hundreds of stairs. The stairs are quite narrow and steep, and there are a lot of people in a cramped space. So, we climbed the stairs, Matt between his mom and me. When we reached the crown of Lady Liberty, we could linger and look towards the bay for just a few seconds because of all the people behind us. The line had to keep moving. As we started down the other side, Matt turned to me and said in a disappointed and frustrated voice, "That's it? That's my son, a man of few words." The second story of Matt's laconic nature occurred in Vatican City. Matt, Tina, and I were in Rome on Christmas Day 2001, and we decided to attend the Pope's Christmas message. As some of you may recall, Pope John Paul II was fluent in several languages, and he would deliver his Christmas speech in Latin, his native Polish, English, French, German, Portuguese, and Spanish, among others. Matt naturally did not recognize some of those languages, and hearing the Pope with the less than perfect audio in St. Peter's Square, Matt turned to us at one point and said, in an incredulous voice, "He's mumbling." But that's my son, a man of few words. Tina and I have known each other our entire lives. We grew up on Braxton Street in Gassaway, started first grade together, and for the past 49 years, she has been both my wife and best friend. She is kind, generous, and always thinking of others before herself. Opposites really do attract. I cannot imagine life without her. When we moved to Morgantown, for me to begin graduate school at WVU, in her usual altruistic way, she paused her own education and took a job with the West Virginia Department of Human Services. She remained the primary income earner until we relocated to Georgia and I began my first full-time position as an assistant professor of economics. After we came to Florence, she finished her education at Francis Marion and began her long and successful teaching career, primarily at the Montessori School of Florence, where she also served as director. Tina is better than I am at real-world stuff, what the English economics professor Alfred Marshall would call the ordinary business of life. Perhaps the story which best demonstrates that claim involves buying a new vehicle. While I absolutely despise the almost inevitable negotiation that comes with that particular market activity, she, I think, rather enjoys it. In 2008, we decided that I needed new wheels, and I knew I wanted a dependable pickup truck. So, off to Toyota of Florence we go. After I test drove the truck that I wanted, we went inside to arrange the monetary aspects of the deal. The finance officer, a young man, wrote down on a piece of paper the dollars he would allow us for the vehicle we were trading and slid it across the desk to us. Tina looked at that number, said no, rather firmly and quickly, and slid the paper back across the desk to him. Clearly surprised by her reaction, he crossed out the first figure, wrote down a second and slightly higher one, and again passed it to us. Her response was the same as before. Just then her cell phone rang. Because she was then the director of the Montessori school, she told us that she had to take the call, excused herself, stood up, walked towards the door, and went outside for better reception. The young man waited until she was out of earshot, then looked at me and said, with conviction, "She's good." And I just smiled and replied, "And that's why she's here." And because she was there, the deal ended in our favor. I was very lucky in 2021 after I accidentally rumbled with a tanker truck. I was lucky that the ambulance that early morning arrived quickly and transported me to McLeod Hospital, where the trauma surgeons saved my life. I was lucky that Tina, Matt, and Laura, and my goddaughter Ashley stayed with me in the ICU every day and many nights for 5 weeks. I was lucky that my brother-in-law Steve and my sister-in-law Tammy helped out at home. I was lucky that I worked at an institution with colleagues who were sympathetic and took care of everything job-related, from arranging for a semester of medical leave to covering my classes. I know from personal experience that not all employers and co-workers would have been so understanding and so generous. Like Lou Gehrig those many years ago, I consider myself a lucky man. I have been lucky with my family, my hometown, my country, my teachers, my friends, and my colleagues at Francis Marion University. In sum, I have been lucky in life, and I hope I have been a good traveling companion for everyone here today and for those not here that I have known and cared about. So, now that I have bared my soul, I will take my leave. Before I drift away, however, a few final thoughts and hopes for you, expressed for me by the transcendent Bob Dylan. May God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars and climb on every rung. May you stay forever young. Thank you all for being here today and for everything you've done for me. Goodbye and good luck.
Dr. Kyer, on behalf of the faculty, the administration, and the staff at Francis Marion University, I want to thank you for your words today and for your service to our university and the community, and present you with this beautiful, beautiful clock.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Go ahead. Thank you. Where do I go?